Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to finish up our unit on basic objects and classes in section 2.5, talking about the math class. Let's dive into that here. So the math class is part of the standard Java language package. So as in, it's a class that's written for you already to use. And part of the standard package means that you don't have to import it. You can just start using it right off the bat. And the reason for it, like the class name, math, it contains methods for performing basic math operations. Okay, so very similar to the string class, okay, it's there for you already, part of the standards package, and there to do a purpose. Okay, in this case, it's math. Now, unlike the string class, with the math class, there's no constructors. Okay, so you cannot instantiate a math object, which also means that all methods are static. They're not performed on an individual math object. They're performed from the class itself. Now, the whole math class contains a ton of different methods for doing different math operations. Now, these are the ones you're going to need to know for the actual AP exam. Okay, how to find powers, absolute values, square roots, round, and find random numbers. Let's take a look at each of those here. All right, so let's take a look at some of our math methods at work. Okay, so the first line of code, we've got system.out.println. And then first off, notice with each of these methods, I need to have the class name, the math class, before I can make a call to them. So here we're making the method call in a runner class or a main method or something like that. And to make sure that that class I'm writing this code in knows where these methods are coming from, we need to use the math.method, and that's true for all the different method calls I have here. Okay, and again, these are all static methods. I can't create a math object, so I can't say like math1 equals new math object. That doesn't exist in our math class. Okay, these are all going to be using the class name, not an object. Okay, first method we have is the POW method, which stands for power, which takes two parameters. The first being the base and the second the exponent. When I write this math.pow 2 comma 3, that's calculating 2 to the base raised to the third power. So in other words, when I print that, we'll get an 8. Okay, pretty straightforward. Next up, math.abs. Abs stands for absolute value. So when I write this abs -3, that's just the same thing as the absolute value of -3, which we know obviously is a positive 3. Okay, next up we've got the math.squirt, as in math.square root. Okay, SQRT just stands for taking the square root, so this would just be square root 4, which is a 2. And then the last one, math.round. Okay, we've used this .round in a few apps already. This is just going to round to the nearest integer. Okay, so the 5.7 will round up to the 6. Okay, like we've seen before, this is how we round to an int rather than just truncating the 0.7 off. Okay, round will round up or round down properly the way you learned about it in math class. All right, the next method we're going to talk about is math.random, which, like the name says, is used for generating random numbers. And this one's a little tricky to use. When I call math.random without any parameters, it returns a double in the range from 0 to 1, not including 1. Okay, so for example, if I want system.out.println math.random, I'm not necessarily going to get this answer, but here's a potential answer. It's a double with 15 decimal places, somewhere between 0 and 1, not including 1. Okay, now you might be asking yourself, what's the point of that? How are numbers like this going to help me? Well, let's take a look at how we can turn this kind of ugly, long, random double into something practical. All right, so let's say we want to generate a number between 0 and some other number. Okay, the way we'll do that is we'll call math.random, which again gives us a number between 0 and 1. And if we multiply that by the number we want plus 1, that's going to give us numbers between 0 and that number, okay, as a double, and then I can cast it all as an int when it's all said and done, okay, to change it to a random integer between 0 and that number. Okay, so for example, if I want a random number between 0 and 12, what I'll do is I'll go math.random, which gives me something between 0 and 1. I'll multiply that by 13, so now I have numbers from 0 up to 13, not including 13, and then truncating will make it so that, with the cast, will make it so that the decimal place disappears. Okay, one way I like to think about this is using interval notation from pre-calc. Math.random, again, gives us something from 0 to 1. And then we're multiplying that by 13. And casting as an int. Okay, so if I take something from 0 to 1 and times by 13, what I'll end up with is that int from 0 to 13, okay, still not including 13. And when I cast that, what I'll end up with is the actual list, 0, 1, 2, up to 13. Okay, when I get rid of the decimal places, we'll have integers, okay, from that cast. Okay, we can also extend that idea to find random integers between some low and high value. Okay, this is going to have a similar setup. We're going to cast, and within that cast, we'll have the math.random for a number from 0 to 1. Then we'll multiply that by high minus low plus 1. In other words, this will give us the range of values we want, okay, however many values are in that range. And then when we plus low, that's going to take us from 0 as my lowest value to the low as my lowest value. Okay, so for example, if I want random numbers between 10 and 20, I'll do this. So kind of work this out like a math equation again. Int times math.random, which will give us the 0 to 1. And then times, when I go 20, so the high minus the low plus 1, let's see here, that'll be an 11. Okay, and then once again, when I multiply this range by the 11, that's going to give me numbers from 0 to 11, okay, including the 0, not including the 11, okay, plus a 10. Okay, then when I add the 10, basically what I have are, this is kind of out of the order of operations, but get the point across, numbers from 10 to 21, not including the 21. And then casting this expression as an int will leave me with the numbers 10, 11, 12, ... up to 20, 21. Okay? Little bit of a complicated process, but once you do a few of them, you'll kind of figure out how it works. Now, this is something you do need to know for the AP exam. I guarantee you're going to see at least one multiple choice question about generating random numbers between a low and high value. So as far as stuff to memorize, this formula, okay, have an example in hand would be good things to memorize. Okay, because like I said, I guarantee you are going to see a problem like this. And if you know the formula, it's a pretty simple problem, pretty straightforward problem. So last thing we'll talk about are some static variables that come along with the math class. Okay, so the math class is mainly made up of static methods that are used for making calculations in other classes, but it also stores a few static variables to make those calculations easier, such as the values of e and pi, two things that get used a lot in math class, okay, in a lot of different math calculations. Okay, so a static double E, remember that's the base of the natural logarithm, 2.71828, blah, 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 on and on forever. Okay, or probably more popular, pi, that's our ratio of the diameter to the circumference of a circle, okay, the 3.14159, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so why these are helpful, rather than writing in your program, let's say pi, for example, do I want to use 3.14? Do I use 3.1459? What these static variables will do is store those values to 15 decimal places. Okay, in other words, as accurate as Java can store them, and then you have an easy way to reference them without typing out all the decimals yourself. Okay, so for example, let's look at a simple formula for calculating the area of a circle. Int rad equals 7, so as in the radius is 7. Then we can find the area of a circle. We know area of a circle is pi times radius squared. If I want to use that static variable stored in the math class, what I'll do is I'll say math class dot pi, capital P, capital I, and again, that's going to grab for me that 3.14159 all the way up to 15 decimal places. And then we can go math.pow rad 2 for squaring the radius. When we print that out, we'll get a double, okay, accurate to 15 decimal places. All right, so there you go. There's the math class. Pretty short and sweet, pretty straightforward. Okay, important stuff though, we're going to use all semester, all year long. So start cranking out some code, start rocking through the homework, and let us know if you need help. We'll be there to help you out.